could try a little harder to be better conservationists when it comes to using electricity. That's a fact. But, you see, it kind of hooks us on the dirtiest power that there is. And, parenthetically, one of the things that really galls me about some in the environmental movement is that they're trying so hard to tar the oil sands with this tar sands dirty oil label brand. They've succeeded to some extent. And interestingly, all the oil sands developments currently in operation generate 36% of our greenhouse gas emissions, and the handful of coal-fired generating stations generate 44%. Mr. Speaker, we could flip those relatively easily, because after all, the infrastructure, the building infrastructure is in place, and the related infrastructure. We could switch those existing coal-fired plants to gas reasonably easily and reduce our carbon footprint from the production of electricity to 40% of what it is today. I think that would be significant. Plus, we're missing a golden opportunity here by imposing an old-school solution on a problem that actually presents a raft of new opportunities that we're on the cusp of. Distributed generation, building the generating capacity close to where it's going to be consumed. Things like the ability, which is not that far away, Mr. Speaker, of individual homeowners to engage in a little bit of cogeneration on their own behalf, taking the waste heat off their furnace and using it to generate the power that is going to provide much of their home-based consumption needs, might even power their car when you plug it in at night, once they've got an electric car. We've got gas-fired generators versus coal. I spoke about that. So there are a raft of opportunities here, some of them pretty exciting, for greening our grid. And one of the things, Mr. Speaker, that is key here is that we do need to take a sustained, sustainable, predictable, logical, sensible approach to expanding and modernizing our grid so as to make it possible for an individual homeowner to dump excess power that he has generated onto the grid for somebody else to use, or to make all kinds of things possible, the generation of more wind power, et cetera, more renewables. Those things do require a more modernized grid, but a greener grid.
Order 29-2A is available. The honourable member for Edmonton Highlands Norwood on 29-2A.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the honourable member if he could elaborate further on prospects for greening the production of electricity in our province.
The honourable member.
Well, thank you, honourable member from Edmonton Highlands Norwood. And yet, to an extent, I will. I'm not an expert in it. Just like I suspect you're not an expert, and just like I suspect nobody else in this House is really an expert in electricity. But there is great potential for generating electricity via the use of wind power, and it may even not only be confined to southern Alberta, where we generally think the greatest and the greatest generating capacity for wind is in southern Alberta, in that corridor from the Crow's Nest Pass sort of over to Lethbridge. But there may be capacity to build wind generation facilities in other parts of the province, because the wind does not necessarily blow across Alberta in a consistent basis like it does under this dome sometimes. So if the wind isn't blowing in Lethbridge and it is blowing east of Red Deer, why shouldn't we have wind turbines there to generate power, for instance? There is biomass as well, which we have started to work with, but which we could do much more with, in my opinion. There's solar, which we basically haven't started to work with. And if you look in Europe, if you look in Germany especially, and granted, this has involved heavy government subsidies, and this is not something that I or anyone else in this House can recommend without this House having a discussion of whether they want to go down the route of subsidization. But in Germany, the government there has subsidized whole solar farms, where literally farmers' fields have been turned over to, a combination of growing crops and arrays of solar panels that generate a fair amount of electricity. Now, none of these situations, Mr. Speaker, or honourable member, none of these examples, none of these situations is the ideal solution to all our electrical woes or our environmental woes. It's going to take a combination of strategies. But there is real potential there. There is real potential, honourable member, for you to have what is called a Stirling engine fitted in a couple of years' time, probably, once they've been properly tested, on your furnace and generate some of, with the waste heat from your furnace, generate some of the electricity that you use in your house. And if you decide to trade well, it's not a New Yorker that you're driving, but some kind of Chrysler in on a plug-in hybrid or a plug-in electrical vehicle on down the road, maybe it'll recharge your car's batteries overnight. There are some very, very interesting possibilities here. We're on the cusp of those possibilities, Mr. Speaker, and we're not likely as a province to take a world leadership, state-of-the-art, leading-edge role in developing those possibilities and creating the jobs surrounding that if we build this gold-plated transmission system that works best to keep the coal-fired plant rolling and the coal fires burning. Thank you.
29-2A still available. The honourable member for Calgary-Glenmore.
Well, member, he referred a little bit to the CO2 emissions in the province at 38% coming from the oil sands, 44% from the coal-fired plants. I'm wondering if he has any more data if, in fact, we were to replace that. And not that I'm a CO2 skeptic, because I have questions on whether that should even be driving our economy, but we are subject to a tax that could be coming from foreign countries on exporting our electricity if we have the coal-fired areas there. I'm wondering if he knows what the actual reduction would be. He talked about 40% on the coal versus coal. Does he have any idea on the megatons on what that reduction would be in the province and the overall percentages, and whether or not, because I know he's been an advocate and spoken a lot on the Kyoto Protocol, if in fact we were to convert that, if we would meet the Kyoto Protocol by converting to gas-fired opposed to coal-fired plants.
The honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have those particular figures at my fingertips, and I would have to go back and do some research on that to come up with a specific answer to that question. Having said that, would it meet our Kyoto targets all by itself? I don't know. Would it get us a lot closer? Well, obviously. If today or if tomorrow with gas you're producing 40% of the emissions that you produce with coal.
I'm sorry, honourable member, we must now forge ahead. So we'll recognize the following speakers in this order. The honourable member for Calgary-Glenmore, followed by the honourable member for Edmonton-Decore, followed by the honourable member for Highlands-Norwood, followed by the Leader of the Official Opposition, and the honourable member for Cypress-Medicine Hat. So, the honourable member for Calgary-Glenmore.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honour to rise and to speak to this bill, as it currently is becoming a #1 issue for the taxpayers of Alberta. And it's been brought up several times already, and I'm sure as the other speakers arise, they'll also be referring to this, because what the job of the government is to ensure that the taxpayers' money is used wisely. And it's amazing to me, as I've done some research on this, trying to find out why is the government saying we're in a crisis situation? Why are they allowing AESO to circumvent our system that we've had in place for years and have served us well, to declare a crisis, when my understanding is with the legislation that one must submit a report if in fact there is a crisis or a problem,